I read an article on a website called babe.net about Aziz Ansari, and it was the worst day of my life.
Dang it.
Heyo, it's the 9 to 5 Misfits back again to help you build your brand and kick ass in your career, baby.
So jumping right in, the Aziz Ansari story has been doing the rounds. Now, we don't believe this is sexual assault, but more on that later. We also want to discuss this from a branding perspective and a DESI perspective. If you haven't read the story yet, it's a terribly written piece in my opinion, but go read it, make your own judgment. If you want the TLDR version though, a piece came out on a website called babe.net. Basically, this woman who's anonymous but goes by Grace went on a date with Aziz Ansari, and it turned out to be quote-unquote the worst night of her life. And when we read the headline, we were like, no! Why?
So she met him at a party, she flirted with him, he eventually flirted back, they exchanged numbers and they decided, let's meet up sometime later. So they went to a restaurant and then back to his place where things got a little dicey. Basically, it seems like she was expecting a romantic date because she had a certain impression of him being a feminist and a kind of goofy guy that strikes out a lot.
Leslie Knope, Tom Haverford, dating in the car, dating on the floor, dating everywhere cause she wants some more. What? Yeah, are we gonna? Yeah.
But Aziz Ansari, on the other hand, was expecting a hookup and he just came off looking like a horny teenager.
I mean, he clearly wanted to get it on. She tried to get him to slow down, and he obliged a few times but then kept trying to get her to perform oral sex on him. She gave in a couple of times, then she said she wanted to leave. He called her an Uber and she left. She texted him the next day. She mentioned that she felt really uncomfortable, that he ignored her verbal and non-verbal cues to slow down. And he genuinely apologized and said he misread the situation.
Okay, so we have a problem with this for a few reasons. Number one, the article alleges that this was sexual assault, but it was not. Sure, Aziz Ansari was not consistent with this feminist persona that he portrays, but he didn't force her into having sex, he didn't threaten to ruin her career over it, and he also showed empathy and remorse after she explained how uncomfortable she was. At least he had the decency to not out her. I mean, not that the bar should be set so low that that is something we should celebrate, but he doesn't deserve to be lumped in with Harvey Weinstein and Roger Ailes. I mean, those guys willingly use their position of power to harass women and assault them. So to go and out him now just seems like an attempt to hop on that METOO bandwagon. And it comes at the expense of potentially ruining someone's career who doesn't deserve it.
Secondly, I have a problem with the whole way that babe.net handled the story. So they actually approached Grace for the article.
Of course they did.
Didn't do their necessary due diligence. They didn't even give Aziz Ansari enough time to respond before they ran the story. And it was just written in such poor taste with like unnecessarily graphic details about the encounter. But they knew exactly what they were doing because it's relatable and it's sensational. Two things that almost guarantee that it'll go viral. So the motivation then seems more about getting traffic to their website than to actually contribute to the Me Too movement in any meaningful way. In fact, it actually did the opposite because then it just became fodder for all these idiots who were like, oh, I knew it, the Me Too movement is dead now because feminists are overdoing it.
The whole idea of the Me Too and Time's Up movement is not only to give women a voice, help them come out of their shadows and bravely tell their story, but it's also to help men engage in conversation. But in this case, Aziz Ansari was on blast and Grace conveniently chose to be anonymous. Well, I don't know if it was her idea or babe.net. What are men supposed to be taking away from this? Because shutting them down is completely counterproductive. So what is the solution? Who's at fault? Is there anything we can learn from this?
So now there's already been a lot of discussion on this. Should he have read her mind? Should she have been able to read his mind? Is it a generational thing? Because she's 23, he's 34.
Dirty dog, you.
So did they have different ideas of what constitutes sexual harassment? And why did the story make it look like he had all the power and agency? All of that has been talked about to death. But we can't ignore the fact that Aziz Ansari is DESI. And he was raised by immigrant parents. I'm not saying that this excuses anything, but it does bring up a good point. We need to look at this from a DESI angle. And it's time to do the one thing we hate doing, have a healthy conversation about sex.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be.
Most DESI kids grew up in traditional households. The only guidance we got about sex was, don't do it, beta. But there was absolutely no guidance or education on how to express sexuality or what consent means. So most of us turned to our equally uneducated friends. I mean, think about where you heard about sex for the first time and how completely ridiculous it was.
कुछ हो गया तो
क्या होगा?
बच्चा
बच्चा ऐसे थोड़ी होता है.
Other sources of information, porn and Bollywood, which basically has one premise. Boy likes girl, girl hates boy, boy stalks girl and harasses her, and then she likes him, and then they live happily ever after.
Also, think about how men and women are raised. As women, we've been conditioned to put other needs above ours.
You know everything because you're a man, and I know nothing because I'm a woman.
You're not a woman.
Oh, you bastard.
So we'd rather just not kick up a fuss and give in when it comes to the bedroom because we're used to doing that everywhere else. Men, on the other hand, are socialized to be aggressive and take what's theirs.
I'm pretty but tough like a diamond, or beef jerky in a ball gown.
But do you see how that can be a problem when it comes to sex and consent? I mean, how do you switch modes? It's not really that hard, it's just something that we've never really given much thought to, but it's time to start now. Educate your kids or have a chat with your partner and set some ground rules. What does consent mean? What's the appropriate way to pursue someone? And how do you handle rejection?
There's also another issue. Think about the language we use, especially in Desi culture. This isn't news to you. We don't like saying a hard yes or no for most things. We don't like to be direct. Even when you want to say a hard no, you just don't get around to it. You go, I might not want to, instead of saying I don't want to. So now, put that in context of sex. Something we're already awkward about, and think how hard it is to be direct. Wanna do the sex?
Oh, I had moli paratha today. Whoops.
Wanna have the sex?
I don't know. Baba Ramdev said कि मेरा राहु काल चल रहा है.
Wanna do the sex?
But we'll wake up the kids.
We don't have any kids. Wanna do the sex?
I played flames using our names, but I didn't get M for man. One of the main reasons that this story blew up is because Aziz's whole feminist brand didn't match up with what we saw in the article. I know this is an extreme example, but authenticity is so important to your brand presence. With everything being out there on social media now, if you're not who you say you are, people will find out.
The other questionable brand is Katie Way, the author of that Babe.net story. When Ashley Banfield, a really well-known reporter, called out Grace for essentially ruining Aziz Ansari's career over a bad date, Katie wrote her this letter trying to protect her friend, saying, how are you belittling Grace's experience? But she sounded more mean girl and entitled, going after Ashley Banfield's looks and her age.
Good job distracting from your entire point.
And she sounded super smug too, saying, I'm Katie Way, I'm 23, I have this huge accomplishment under my belt, writing this one article, and that she's not too shabby. Well, I hate to tell you this, Katie. This too shabby. This too shabby indeed.